Hi, I'm Scott Willison, owner of the Confluence Fly Shop in Bellingham, Washington. It's September here in North Puget Sound. We've got lots of fresh coho salmon showing up off of our beaches, and we are out there fishing for them. This is a newer fly that I've come up with to imitate the somewhat smaller herring that we're seeing off Whidbey Island this year. They're all 2.5 to 3 inches long. Very light in coloration, kind of a gray silver color. So this is my silver bullet herring that I'm going to tie for you today. We're starting out with a size 1 Gamakatsu SC15 hook in the vise, and I've already got a 5/32 inch tungsten bead slid up on the hook here. So I'm going to go ahead and start my thread at the rear of the hook. We'll get down a little thread base. I want to make sure as I'm tying this that I leave plenty of room to get a pair of eyes up front. So I don't want to push that bead all the way up to the eye of the hook, or it's going to mess me up. For our tail, we're going to use some white bucktail. And I'm just going to take a good little clump of it here. We can comb out any of the short little bits of underfur there. I'm not worried about stacking this. I've got a couple weird hairs that are quite a bit longer than everything else. I'll go ahead and pull those out. And then this is going to be about twice the length of the shank. And we'll get that bound down really on just the latter half of the hook. And then trim that stuff off the end. I'm going to overlay that with a little bit of this just UV crystal flash here. And I'll cut off, say, 4 strands or so. I'm going to cut them fairly long because I'm going to end up doubling these over. Before I tie them in, I'm just going to pull on a few of those tips and kind of get them at staggered lengths. And I like this crystal flash to be just a hair longer than the bucktail. So I center tied that and then folded it over. And then we'll tie that down. And then we're going to go over the top of that. This is lateral scale here. I usually take 3 strands of this stuff, again keeping them on the longer side. And we're going to tie these in the same way. And I'll make these even a little bit longer than the crystal flash. That'll add a little bit of extra movement to the fly over the tail. Now for the body, we're going to use just some flat silver diamond braid. You could use regular silver diamond braid if you wanted to, but I like the flat stuff. It's just nice and easy to work with. And notice I've kept all of my tie-in points at about the halfway point on the hook so that I remember to leave myself room for the eye or eyes. We'll go ahead and wrap this forward. cut that off. At this point, we'll throw a 3 or 4 turn whip finish in there. So for this rear portion, I used a white 140 Denier Ultra thread. I'm just going to put a little brush on zap over those thread wraps there. Make this thing nice and durable while we're at it. Then I'll slide that bead back. Make sure I push it back as far as it can possibly go. And then I'm going to restart my thread, only this time I'm using a uni clear monofilament thread. So we're going to add a beard to this fly to kind of give it a little bit of bulk at the head. This will help push water and give it the wide profile of a herring. So to start with, I'm going to use a little bit of this ice dub in a minnow belly color. I often use UV pearl for this as well. And we'll just pull out a fairly sparse amount. And on the underside of the hook, we're going to center tie that and then just kind of sweep it back with our thumb and forefinger and wrap over that. And then in front of that, I'm going to put some white Senyo's laser dub. And I'm just kind of straightening this out, trying to get it all roughly the same length. We will center tie that as well. I like to kind of mold this around the hook a little bit, so I'm getting about 180-degree coverage on that bottom side of the hook, and then we'll make sure to wrap that back tightly all the way to the bead, and then we're good. Next material, I'm going to add a little bit of ripple ice fiber. For this I use either the Minnow mix or the UV pearl, and we'll just pull out kind of a sparse amount there. We're going to center tie that, fold the rest of it back, and we're good to go. This fly does have a lot of flash and sparkle to it, but it's somewhat muted being inside the fly, so it kind of has this inner glow to it. I'm going to overlay that with a little bit of silver holographic Flashabou. I think one of the things you often see when you got big schools of bait out there and fish crashing into the bait balls, you'll get a lot of kind of a scale fall. So there's a lot of silver sparkly stuff like glitter in the water. And that tends to tell the fish, hey, there's something going on over here that we want to check out. So I've got 3 strands of that, center tied that, pulled it back over the top, and then we're good to go. And then I'm gonna just make sure I've got those all kind of unevenly trimmed. Next material we're going to go over the top with is a Farrar blend in bleeding gray. This has some grays and blues and reds in it. And I'm going to pull out a decent amount there. We'll center tie this and fold it back as well, and then we're going to have a little bit of trimming to do. So I've got that pulled back over the top. Really locked into place. And then I'm going to trim this up. I want it longer than my bucktail, but I go kind of the underside at an angle, and then I go on top at an angle, and I'm trying to give this a little bit of a taper to it so that it looks more realistic in the water. And then the very last bit that we'll add to this fly is some angel hair in baitfish color. And I keep this stuff on the sparse side. I just want to darken up that dorsal surface on the fly here. Just make sure that's right on top of the fly. And then we'll get that head bound down. And then we can go ahead and do a whip finish. So I usually do a couple of 4-turn whip finishes on these guys because this mono thread is really slippery and it likes to slip out, so that gives me a little bit of insurance. We can trim that, and then we'll trim the end of it there. Before I'm totally done, I'll often run a brush through here. Just get any of those weird long fibers dealt with and out of the way. And I'm essentially done. I've got a good broad profile with some taper to it. We're going to kind of slick some of that material back out of the way because we want to have one more step. I've got some Flyman eyes here in the ice color. These are 4mm. We're going to make sure to add eyes to this thing. And I think I did a pretty good job leaving enough space to get some eyes on here. So we'll stick one to either side. Try to get them fairly even. I think we're in good shape there. And then I've got a thin UV resin. This is Solarez. You can't tell because I've got it wrapped in toilet paper, but I had a little spill earlier this afternoon and it's kind of sticky otherwise. So we're going to do this in a couple steps here. So first step is I'm going to fill in that little gap on top of the fly or between the eyes. Get that on there. That looks pretty good. I've got an eye that's kind of going squirrely on me, so we're going to very carefully tap that back into place. And then we'll cure that up. And then I'm going to fill the... There goes the flashlight. We're going to fill the gap on the bottom of the fly here as well. Now I've kind of laid the way so that I've got a nice, smooth, somewhat rounded surface that I can finish up this head. So mainly going to cover up the eye on each side, and I'll go over and under with the resin a little bit so that we've got that whole head covered. And then we can go ahead and rotate our vise to kind of get that to level out. And then I think we're good. Now, one little trick that I didn't have to do this go around, but sometimes you'll get a little overzealous with the UV resin and it'll get in the eye of the hook. If you've got a scrap feather or something lying around on the desk, you can just run that through the eye and pull it through. That'll usually get rid of that resin before you cure it, so that you can easily get your tippet through the eye of the hook. Anyway, that is the silver bullet herring. It's been a great pattern so far this season, and hope it continues working through the end of September. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please be sure to like our YouTube channel and subscribe. Thanks.